Check the description for the following discount codes.
Today I've got a plethora of Fanatec or Fanatec products specifically aimed for rally, and it makes sense to look at these today because, of course, Assetto Corsa Rally is out, my new favourite sim. Rally is my absolute reason for being into sim racing, so to finally have a game in the works, obviously it's still early access, but it already looks very promising, is very exciting for me. So when you want to drive rally, the first thing you're going to need is a round steering wheel. There's no point having an open wheel with the top and bottom missing. There's no point having a D-shaped wheel with the bottom cut off. It needs to be round. The reason for this, if you don't know, is because with rally driving, your steering inputs are very dramatic, quite often turning the wheel far more so than you would in any other sim, particularly in the early 80s rally cars that have a very big lock. You know, it could be 1100 degrees versus a modern rally car that might be 320 degrees of rotation. So you're putting big inputs in, and when you drift around a corner, and this applies to actually drifting, you know, drifting, if you're into that as well, you will often let go of the wheel and fling it and then catch it again, so that the car, so basically your wheels stay where they are in the direction you want them to be, but the car rotates and enters that slide, and then you catch the wheel at the angle you want it to be at. This is very much more of a tried and not tried and tested, but a practiced technique. It's not something that comes easy. But even for beginners, you will find you are manhandling the wheel something crazy. So it needs to be round and ideally a reasonable size. The one we've got here is Fanatec's drift wheel. It is 32 centimetres, I believe, so 320 mil, which is not a bad size. And it has a little bit of a dish to it. Again, the dish is nice because it means your fingers, your hands are free of any obstructions when you're flinging it around. You're not going to catch it on, if it was a real life car, indicators or other controls that might be behind the wheel. So that's useful. But yeah, this is their drift wheel. They have got some rally specific wheels come out. I don't have any of those here today. This is only 139 euros, but it is just the wheel. There's no button box attached to this. It's genuine leather, and the appearance, as always, will be a matter of taste. The stitching feels quite nice. It's some cheaper wheels, the stitching's very abrasive, and you know, where your thumbs would go in here if you're not wearing gloves could start to aggravate your skin. I have had that before. But that's the wheel. I'm only going to look at these things sort of kind of quickly because the video would be really long if I looked at everything in mega detail. The other thing the wheel comes with is this silver Fanatec centre cap that obviously goes in the middle there. Now, if you've got your wheel, what are you going to bolt your wheel to? Because as I say, it doesn't come with a button box or a hub of any description. So we have the Clubsport Universal Hub V2 here, which is, as you can see, a universal hub. Many different button options. You can you literally split this in two, and you can subtract or remove the individual button assemblies by just unplugging them and undoing one little bolt. So super easy. You can put them, you can see all those holes there. They're the holes that allow you to position these wherever you want for the wheel you want to use. Comes with a couple of paddles, magnetic paddles included, and there are little paddle extensions here so that you can space them out further. Again, depending how big your wheel is, you might need them to go further out. As I say, they are magnetic. There's also adjustment on the side there as well. You loosen the bolts up, you can move them around. On the top, you've got a whole load of buttons for presets and for going through the menu. And there is a little screen here, which is quite a cool touch, that you can pull out, and it can either be in the orientation you just see it in, or you can put it in from the top so it sticks up like that. And that's configurable. You can have your gear on there, or your speed, or whatever it is you might want. So that's a nice little touch. This comes with no quick release. So obviously these days you would fit one of their QR2 quick releases rather than one of the older ones. And this, coupled with this, is what I was testing this out with today. Again, for rally, I don't need all these buttons, but you know, I left them mostly on, aside from the one that I took off just to show you, you know, how it works. The other thing you get with the universal hub is a black centre cap. So should you not like the silver one, you can fit a black one. Entirely up to you. So, anything else about this we need to know? No, I don't think so. I suppose you might want to know prices. The wheel, did I say it was 140 euros? I might have done. That's the current price of the wheel. The universal hub is currently 420 euros, down from 520 euros. It's 100 euros off the universal hub. That isn't cheap for what it is, but I guess this is just life. Things are not cheap. So, yeah, universal hub and your drift or rally wheel is what we'll look at to begin with. And then we've got the, I'm going to call it classic Fanatec shifter. This shifter has been around for quite some time, and it is the shifter I used right up until I got my BD8 shifter, because for the price, it's probably the nicest shifter you can get. And also we have to bear in mind console compatibility here. Fanatec are probably the biggest sim racing hardware manufacturer in the world, and they cater to Xbox and PlayStation as well as just PC. Obviously we have to remember that console users can't use things like the BD8 shifter, for example. So having a decent shifter that's console compatible is actually really quite nice. So if you look on the top there, we've got gears, I don't know whether you'll see it or not, gears 1 to 7, and then a reverse gear as well. It's got a nice short throw to it, but it can be shortened, and I'll show you that in a second if you like modding. Movement to go off centre to your first and second, and then your fifth and sixth is not very far, and then to go into reverse or seventh you actually have to push it down and go across like that, and that would put you into reverse, for example, and then seventh would be across and up like that should you want to use 7 gears. But otherwise it's a nice little shifter. In fact, I'll put some footage up now actually of me just doing some Assetto Corsa rally, and you'll see me shifting, you'll see me using the steering wheel, you'll see how it all looks on the rig, and we'll do some close-ups in a minute as well. And you'll see the handbrake fitted, which we'll take a look at here at the desk also in a second. One thing you can do, and you'll see this in the video here, is that the handbrake is designed to bolt to the side of the shifter, and that's useful for people who don't have, for example, an aluminium profile cockpit, who could then just bolt it wherever they wanted. The ability to stick it on the side of your shifter is really quite nice. Now, the only issue, and you may already have noticed this in the clip you're watching, is that because that then sticks out so far to the left, and then you've got the long handle that is the handbrake handle, you are adding a lot of leverage onto whatever your shifter mount might be. Now I'm using a GT Amiga Prime cockpit in this clip, and you can still see a huge amount of flex in my shifter mount. And even the aluminium profile arm that the shifter mount is bolted to is actually moving as well. And it's not really the fault of the rig or the shifter mount, it's because you've added a huge amount of leverage to a side where you wouldn't normally have leverage. You know, sim rigs, typically the forces are applied kind of front to back in a longitudinal fashion. They're not typically applied sideways, which is what's happening when I'm grabbing the handbrake and I'm pulling it. I'm not just pulling it straight back, I'm pulling it, you know, in towards me. You can't help it, that's how your arm is attached to your shoulder. If I was to want to pull it straight back, I would need to lean myself out of my chair to the left a bit and just pull it straight back, and then you wouldn't see that sort of twisting or flexing motion that you see in the clip. But as I say, that's just the nature of bolting it to the side of the shifter, and I thought it was cool to show you that you can do that. If it was me using this shifter full time on my rig, it would be mounted where my Husenvelt shifter is mounted on the uprights of my aluminium profile, and I'd just be able to pull it like I would normally do. And I tell you what, testing this was a nightmare, because the muscle memory I have for reaching for that handbrake over the last however many years, to then have to try and reach across and grab this one that was to my left, an absolute nightmare. The amount of times I grabbed the wrong handbrake and then just instantly stacked the car was annoying. But that's just a me issue, obviously. So yeah, these will go together as a couple like this, using this little bracket that goes in between the two. And you can mount the handbrake in a few different orientations, kind of like this, or upright, or like this. We're talking about mounting it to the shifter here. What you have is a couple of little T-nuts. Whoop, don't knock it over, Cole. A couple of little T-nuts that slide in, and then this bolt to the T-nuts. Now, the only issue I had, and you might have noticed this in the video a minute ago, is that when these are bolted together, the shifter actually sits, I'm going to exaggerate it here, sits lower than what, sorry, the handbrake sits lower than the shifter, like this. That meant when I tried to bolt this assembly to my shifter mount, this hit the shifter mount, the shifter mount, and prevented the rest of the shifter from actually sitting down on top of the mount. So what I had to do was grab some T-nuts and put them underneath where the 4 bolts go to space this up. There was no way to adjust this up or down any further. It was as up as it could go. Now, if your shifter mount was not as wide as mine, and this shifter literally, the mount finished where your shifter finished, it wouldn't be a problem because it would hang down, past it, no issues. My GT Amiga Prime shifter mount was quite wide. There's space on it for a handbrake, but not specifically this one. And where the holes were drilled for this, because there's 4 mounting holes on the bottom there, you can see, M6. Once that's lined up, it sits where it sits. There was no other adjustment. So yeah, I had to just put some spacers underneath to prevent, the issue with me not being able to actually bolt it down. So we'll talk about that again in detail in a minute, or more detail. One more thing to show you on this is it can switch between H pattern and sequential. So you just slide that across like that, and now we're in sequential mode. And there's quite a weight to this, not only in sequential mode, but also in H pattern mode. It doesn't feel like a cheap shifter. It doesn't feel like the Thrustmaster shifter or the Logitech shifter, It's decent, which is why I never changed it until I got my BDH one. So the only issue I found with switching across here, and there's a different knob there you can put on, so you'd probably use this one in sequential mode and that one in H pattern mode. I like to race H pattern. I just find it more fun and engaging, even if it's not accurate to the car I'm racing in. It's just what I like to do. I like to use my clutch as well. So in fact, I was using the Fanatec V3 pedals with this setup, which I might as well put a little clip up of now. Again, I have had these for years as well. And these are what I daily drive. I haven't changed these pedals. And I've had all sorts of pedals here, as you'll know, even like the really high-end Invicta pedals from Assetto. But I'm used to the feel of the brake pedal on the Fanatec V3s. I'm used to the accelerator, and I like the 2-stage clutch, which simulates a biting point, particularly so for when you're launching off the start of a rally stage. You can bring it up to the biting point with your foot by feel, and if you tune the clutch in the settings in the game for that to marry up with where the car would just start to edge forward, you've got a properly realistic clutch feeling and operation. And of course it allows you to then release the handbrake and dump, and away you go. So yeah, I haven't changed these pedals in years, and I've tried all sorts of pedals, so they're still decent should you need a set of pedals. But yeah, so that's the shifter, that's the steering wheel, that's the universal button box we've looked at, universal hub, sorry. The handbrake itself, I'm glad they released this because their original handbrake was pony. It was an awful piece of crap, to be honest. This is a load cell handbrake, so it measures force or pressure rather than travel. And a handbrake for rally or drifting is absolutely essential if you want to get that realistic feel of being a rally driver. Handbraking not only off the start line, but around hairpins, or even 90 rights, possibly even a 1 right or left if you choose to use it just a little bit once you get the hang of it. So yeah, this is a load cell based one. There's all sorts of adjustment. You can run it in this operation, you can run it like that, like this. There's adjustment angle of the handle here, as well as some adjustment inside. You can adjust the travel and the preload. Again, this would be a very long video if I took it all apart and showed you the lot, but I won't. When I first saw this, I thought to myself, do you know what, Carl? It looks a little bit bland, a little bit boring, and the handle I think almost looks a bit, it looks like it's made of plastic and it's cheap and nasty. It isn't made of plastic. It's all cast aluminium and that is a rubber handle. It's not the most exciting of rubber handles and the whole thing isn't particularly exciting. I'd perhaps, if I want to be complimentary, I'd probably use the phrase it's understated. Once I actually got it bolted on my rig beside my shifter, I thought, do you know what? It doesn't look too bad. It's still not a very exciting piece of equipment to look at, and you could still say it's bland, but it wasn't so bad sitting there all together. Now, what's interesting actually, some of you may have noticed. Oh, one thing I forgot to show you with the universal hub, you get a whole load of different button caps, so you can not only configure where you want your different buttons to be, you can configure exactly what they are and put on the appropriate caps to match as well. So that's another nice little touch. What else have we got? Where was I up to? I actually can't remember what I was saying. Oh yes, in the video you may have noticed the shifter looks slightly different to this one. You may have noticed the shaft looks a bit shorter, and that's because here is my original shifter, the one that I've been using for years until I got my BDH. And this was all, here's me trying to save myself some time, right? This was already bolted to my shifter mount because when I replaced it with the BDH, I just undid the shifter mount, took the whole thing off as one. So I thought, oh, cool. I'll just use this in the review, just bolt that to it, and it saves me a little bit of nut and bolt time. Well, of course, that was when I discovered that the handbrake sits further down and you need to use spaces. So I ended up having to undo it from its mount anyway and find some longer bolts and then bolt it back on. But it was already out, I hadn't unpackaged the new one at that point. So this is the one I used in the review. And so as you can see, it has a shorter shaft on it. Now that was something I bought from eBay years and years and years ago. So I don't actually think they're still available because I might have mentioned it in a video before and put a link to it. And I think I've seen some comments from people saying, are these still available? Now the link's dead, Carl. So at the time of recording, I haven't looked to see if they're available. But yeah, that's the one you see in the video. So a slightly shorter throw than what we have here. But as I say, this is not a long throw anyway, look. Doesn't go particularly far. I mean, if we compare it to the shorter one, because some of you are going to go, Carl, why didn't you show us how short the shorter one is? You're leaving us all hanging, and you're absolutely right, so I'll show you. That's how far it goes. Not particularly far. And of course, that makes it heavier as well. So that one further. Yeah. So yeah, the shorter the shaft, the less leverage we apply, the heavier the throw feels. So, I mean, as it comes factory is fine. What is interesting is this new one feels noticeably... Oh, that handbrake's going to keep falling over. Feels noticeably more dampened than my old one. Not that it would cause an issue in use, but it's like, okay, you can tell this isn't a brand new one. There's no extra play or anything like that, though. One thing to mention. Some of you, depending on your sim rig configuration, may suffer what I think is EMI, electromagnetic interference. These shifters have Hall effect sensors in them. So they're not micro switches that are getting pushed when you engage a gear. They are magnetic sensors that detect literally a magnetic field. What happens for some people, and myself included, is that after a number of months, maybe 6 months it was for me, it would start selecting the wrong gears. Not physically it was in the right place, but the gear being selected in the game was completely wrong. So like I'd go into third and it would show first, or reverse. I'd go into sixth and it would show fourth. And like it would do this, it would sort of build up and do it more and more often. And I thought I had a dodgy shifter. I recalibrated it in the software, didn't fix it, blah, blah, blah. There's all sorts of videos online, people saying you need to put a bit of tape over this and you need to clean this and do this. And like, I took it apart once, cleaned it all with isopropyl alcohol, put a bit of tape over whatever it was that was suggested. This was years ago, I can't remember now. Put it back together, worked perfectly. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, nice, easy fix. 6 months later, the issues returned. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, it obviously can't have got, and also inside, immaculately clean. No dust, no nothing, right? So what I was cleaning off with isopropyl, who knows? Nothing there. People are suggesting, micro particles of metal from where the things are sort of moving inside and rubbing against one another. Anyway, there was nothing to clean off. What happened was I realised that if I just undid the 4 top screws there, lifted this sort of top cap up an inch and put it back down, everything worked perfectly. No issues whatsoever. Without any cleaning, without putting tape over anything, no problems whatsoever. I think what's happening it's getting some sort of static build-up inside the shifter. And by undoing those and lifting it up, you're earthing it out perhaps through you, and the static is discharging, because that's all you need to do, and then you're good for 6 months. And again, this is rig dependent. So whether it's down to whether you've got rubber feet on your rig or not, and it's isolated from the ground, maybe those of you with just metal onto the floor, it's not an issue. People with caster wheels versus rubber feet, I don't know. But it doesn't happen for everybody. Some people have been running these for years without issue. For me, it definitely happened. So yeah, if you do buy one of these shifters, there'll be a link in the description for everything. And there's some Black Friday deals on at the moment, but none of this is on Black Friday, and I'm going to assume that's because Assetto Corsa Rally is out, which was launched in partnership with Fanatec, and so there's lots of people looking to buy shifters and handbrakes right now, and they've got absolutely no need to discount anything to encourage sales, because people want to buy them anyway. Business is business, isn't it? They're there to make money, not to help out people with cheap products or cheaper products. So yeah, should you get a shifter and you come across these issues in 6 months' time, undo the 4 top screws, lift it up, put it back down. It literally takes about a minute, because there's just 4 screws, they're Allen screws, Allen bolts, whatever you want to call them. No time at all, really easy fix. But yeah, I had no issues using any of this. I've had the shifter for years. It was my favourite shifter before the BDH. The handbrake is a big step up from the original one, even if it looks very understated or boring, bland, you might say, particularly so the handle. But I mean, it suits the same black aesthetic as the rest of the Fanatec stuff. The wheel, for 140 notes, it's genuine leather. It's got kind of a smooth finish to it. It's got a little bit of a dish. It is a drift/rally wheel, so if you want one of those, no problems recommending that. And my universal hub worked absolutely fine. And if you want to be able to customize everything, then you can. Anyway, there's a hopefully not too long a video, 22 minutes. That's not bad considering we've got like 4 products here reviewed. So yeah, click through in the description if you want to buy any of this. There's a link there to the Fanatec website. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and take it easy.